India has just crossed a very significant strategic threshold in its strategic deterrence capability. It has done so by a test firing a demonstration of its capability to carry MIRVed independently targetable, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, so-called MIRVed warheads, onto its Agni intercontinental ballistic missile of 5,000 kilometers range. About 3 independently targetable warheads are said to have been test fired on the present Agni test launch. The capability is being spoken of in terms of 2 to 10 independently targetable re-entry vehicles or warheads on a single missile. Now, this is an extremely significant capability, as only 5 countries in the world have it so far. The United States, the United Kingdoms and France have MIRV warheads, multiple warheads on their submarine launched ballistic missiles, which are launched by their nuclear submarines. The Chinese have the ICBMs with the MIRV capability, and the Russians have the MIRV capability both on their intercontinental ballistic missiles, land-based, as also their nuclear ballistic submarine launched missiles. They have the MIRV capability. India has also now caught up with the MIRV capability on the intercontinental ballistic missiles of the Agni-5 class. Now, the Agni-5 class has a range of 5,000 kilometers. That means the whole of China is within the reach of this ICBM system, and also this can carry a payload of about 1,500 kg. So, this could mean independently targetable vehicles in the heavy kiloton range. Almost in the 100 kiloton range we could carry these kind of missiles, and with the forthcoming developments in our missilery system, which can easily be spin-offs of our satellite launch vehicles and our space launch platforms, the same can also technology can be converted to creating more longer ranges of intercontinental ballistic missiles, but the 5,000 kilometer range does suffice to cover the whole of China, the whole of Pakistan. Now, what is the advantage that the MIRV capability provides to India? The MIRV in a layman's term is like your cluster munitions. You can have a whole lot of bomblets spread over a large area. So, you have a whole lot of warheads spread over a wide area, which can ensure very comprehensive destruction to be caused onto the enemy side. That is number one. Number two is, now anti-ballistic missiles of pretty high accuracy have been developed, very high effectiveness and lethality have been developed, as has been demonstrated by the Israelis, as has been demonstrated by the Ukrainians with the Patriot missile batteries, etc. And these can shoot down tactical ballistic missiles upwards to intermediate range ballistic missiles and even intercontinental ballistic missiles. The interception can be either in the very high altitude range, or they can be almost in the terminal range. You can carry out interception with anti-ballistic missile systems. But the moment you put your MIRV multiple warheads on a single missile, then the capability of the anti-ballistic missile shield to be very leak-proof and to stop every incoming warhead comes into question. These independently targetable re-entry vehicles or these MIRV warheads can also serve as decoys. If the anti-ballistic missile systems are very thick, very dense, then you can sort of use decoys to take away the defensive systems in the other direction while you attack the intended target. I would also like to point out that the Chinese were quite worried and concerned about our intercontinental ballistic missile launch test with MIRV warheads. They had sent their spy ship to try and monitor this missile launch of the Agni-5. They have been sending the missile ships earlier. India has raised a big storm about it, and it has forced Sri Lanka to put a 1-year moratorium on the such ships coming into the harbour. But it is Maldives which has now jumped into the bandwagon and has been trying to prove itself to be more loyal than the king, and has allowed the Chinese research vessel to enter its port. The fact of the matter is that the Chinese are worried. Some Chinese interlocutors on national television channels, international television channels, have been trying to suggest that India is carrying out chest thumping, top thumping, etc. It's not this. This is part of the normal strategic discourse, wherein you try and send out deterrence messages to all likely adversaries, which simply says we have this capability, don't miscalculate, don't mess with us, don't start something which could escalate into levels you cannot control. And we have assured strike capability which can survive a first strike and yet hit back. Because don't forget that India has a no first use doctrine. That means we give the enemy the capability to launch attack on us first, and we will only retaliate. But the fact of the matter is, what the message we are sending out is that our retaliation would be of such weight and such lethality that would make that state cease to exist, the state that has carried out the attack. And that is why it is essential to advertise these capabilities. It is essential to unambiguously convey these capabilities to the other side, so that they are not tempted to miscalculate, overreach themselves and try and start something which then will boomerang on them. Hence, these missiles have to be tested. They can't be tested in secrecy. These have to be public launches. In any case, you have to warn the maritime traffic to get out of that particular area. So these launches have to be announced in advance and advertised, and they are advertised for a purpose, the prime aim of which is strategic deterrence messaging. This is exactly what has been done. Quite obviously, even the Pakistanis were fairly worried. Now, you see, this Pakistan angle, we must understand that China has taken some steps which are extremely hostile to our national security interest. China, the entire Pakistani nuclear program has a made in China stamp written all over it. Please don't forget that the design of the nuclear warhead was given by the Chinese to the Pakistanis. Not only that, the fissile material for the first 4 plutonium bombs was given by the Chinese to the Pakistanis. The first bomb, Pakistani bomb, was test fired at the Lopnor nuclear testing Chinese range in Xinjiang. No country in the world, the United States hadn't done this for the UK, for Great Britain. No country in this world has done this for any other country, less China. And then China gave the M9 and the M11 missiles delivery systems to Pakistan. And when the Americans put sanctions on those specific entities in China which were giving these missiles, selling these missiles to Pakistan in flagrant violation of the missile technology control regime, etc., then they imposed sanctions on them. The Chinese put the Pakistanis in touch with the North Koreans, who then sold to them their Nodong and Taipodong missiles in exchange for the designs of the nuclear warheads. Pakistan has been the most dangerous proliferator in the whole world, and this China, Pakistan, North Korea combined, between them have been carrying out proliferation of a most dangerous order. Any other country would have raised a hue and cry, but for some reason India has chosen to play this down, to be very subdued and quiet about this kind of a dire provocation. Dire provocation. And now what we find is that Pakistan on paper is supposed to have a nuclear arsenal of some 160 plus warheads. But please bear in mind, most of these are less than the Hiroshima range. They're just about 6 to 10 kilotons in their throw weight. And Pakistan has of late started trying to increase the number of its warheads, trying to send a message that it is a significant nuclear power of consequence by going in for sub-kiloton nuclear weapons. Sub-kiloton nuclear weapons mean less than 1 kiloton nuclear yield. These are primarily designed as tactical nuclear weapons which Pakistan hopes to throw in the path of any major Indian tank thrust that makes deep penetrations into Pakistan. These sub-kiloton nuclear warheads are mostly of demonstrative purposes. They could at best try and stop, an armored regiment, an armored brigade of the Indians which is made breakthroughs or is speeding across their obstacle systems like the canals, like the ditch-cum bunds, etc. But these dangerously lower the nuclear threshold. Pakistan's entire effort so far has been to dangerously lower the nuclear threshold in South Asia. India's response has been very simple. We do not recognize any gradation between sub-tactical, tactical or all-out nuclear exchange. Any crossing of the nuclear threshold would be taken as the red line. And the moment the nuclear threshold is crossed, India reserves the right to hit back with all its might. It will not react in kind. It will not escalate, ladder by ladder, notch by notch by going in for sub-kiloton weapons and then kiloton range weapons and then hundreds of kilotons and then megatons. Sorry. India will give an all-out nuclear response, which the credibility of which is now been enhanced by the fact that we have MIRV capabilities on our intercontinental ballistic missiles. I'm sure this capability would equally come on to our IRBMs, which are more specific to Pakistan. And we could be in a position to penetrate any anti-ballistic missile defense that Pakistan doesn't have that defense as of now. But even China, which has the anti-ballistic missile defense, will not be able to put up a leak-proof anti-ballistic missile shield which can prevent an Indian massive retaliation. Scores of Pakistani towns would be wiped out, and Pakistan, let's not forget, geographically is 1/5 the size of India. The same number of nuclear warheads fired either side onto India and the same number fired on Pakistan would ensure the comprehensive destruction of Pakistan as a viable nation state because of its lesser land area. Pakistan would just cease to exist. There would be no crops growing in Pakistan for the next 2, 3, 4, 500 years. And therefore, Pakistan would have to think 100 times before it initiates even a tactical nuclear release. They have been thumping about the tactical nuclear sub-kiloton weapons that they have got, which their minister very famously called "1.5 pav, 2 pav ke bomb," reducing the whole thing to a farcical joke as far as a serious thing like nuclear capability is concerned. And there is the other aspect of Pakistan. Pakistan is the only nuclear capable state which has such a large number of armed terrorists on its soils. And the world's greatest nightmare would be if these nuclear weapons are stolen by the Pakistani jihadi organizations, because then you destroy the entire regime of deterrence that is now available to the world. There are some 9 nuclear powers, and each of these nuclear powers is a nation state which is a responsible state actor. not likely to risk its territory by a indiscriminate nuclear release, because it knows it will be hit back, paid back in kind. And that is what is the basis of deterrence. But if nuclear weapons and warheads land up into the hand of lunatics like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc., ISIS, then the world is in serious trouble, because the entire deterrence regime breaks down. So we find that in Pakistan, the political problems are almost now reaching a civil war status. The Baluchis have been in revolt. Now the Pashtuns are raising the banner of revolt. The Sindhis are also in revolt for quite some time. The Gilgit-Baltistan Shias population is also extremely volatile and angry. Pakistan is heading for a meltdown. Their economy is, as it is, headed for disaster street. The economic meltdown is staring Pakistan in the face. It is just successively they are trying to take more loans from the IMF to pay off their existing loans. They can't even do the debt servicing. The interest servicing is also not kind of feasible. So here we have the example of a nuclear armed state which is staring at an economic abyss, which is staring at civil war and worse. And if in such a state the nuclear arsenal goes out of the control of the Pakistani army and it falls into the hands of non-state actors, it spells serious trouble not just for India and the neighborhood, but for the entire world per se. Even the United States across so many oceans is still not safe. So this is one facet that India should make clear to the world. This danger we have been highlighting, that Pakistan as it is a very irresponsible nuclear state. It is trying to lower the nuclear threshold instead of trying to make sure that there are no accidental releases or escalation. It is lowering the nuclear threshold, and which itself is very dangerous. Another very interesting deterrence activity has just taken place in Pokaran. You know, for every year we used to have the Indian Air Force exercise culminating in live firing on the Pokaran ranges, which was then thrown open to the public. It was watched by the Prime Minister and important dignitaries, including foreign military attaches, etc., was shown the firepower of the Indian Air Force on display at Pokaran. This year, a very interesting new twist has been added to this deterrence display, and that is that from a single service kind of a firepower demonstration, this has been made a tri-service firepower demonstration, which showcases not just the firepower of the Indian Air Force, it also showcases the firepower of the Indian Army, our artillery systems, our Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher systems, our tactical level missiles, our cruise weapons. I mean, all of these have been put on combined display at Pokaran. The message once again is to all our adversaries. This is to show the level of autarky, the level of strategic autonomy that India has achieved in terms of even conventional weapon production and usage. India is now, has been making its own BrahMos missiles. India has been making its own supersonic cruise missiles, BrahMos, which the rest of the world is now asking for. A number of nations in Southeast Asia, Philippines, etc., are desperate to get hold of Indian BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles to deter China and to prevent the aggressiveness of the Chinese Navy, to cool their heads a bit by trying to acquire Indian BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. India has that capability. India had long ago manufactured the multi-barrel rocket launcher systems of the Pinaka class, and now we are going to go in for even longer range and higher level of lethality of these kind of rocket launcher systems, which have proved their efficacy in the Ukraine. very interesting thing is that India has also developed the capability of producing the ATAGS, Advanced Towed Artillery Gun System. This is a 100% Indian designed gun manufactured in India by the private sector, and designed by the DRDO, manufactured by Bharat Forge, as also the L&T. They are manufacturing this towed gun system, and this has a range of 48 kilometers. May I point out in all humility that the American 155 millimeter howitzer of matching caliber has a range of 45 kilometers that can fire 3 rounds a minute, the American gun. This gun fires 5 rounds a minute to 48 kilometers. It is today one of the best medium guns in the world with the longest range and a heavy throw weight. We have seen in Ukraine that this has been a war winning factor. The artillery, the medium artillery, they have been firing up to 60,000 rounds a day. And let us not forget the heavy artillery bombardments that had been done by the Russians for the capture of Bakhmut and then Avdiivka. Up to 50 to 60,000 rounds a day were fired by primarily the medium artillery guns of the 155, 152 millimeter caliber. And these, of course, were backed up by the multi-barrel launch systems like the Tor and including the thermobaric weapon systems, which have been war-winning factors. These guns, heavier guns, were also on display in Pokaran. We also had our Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher system on very high visibility display in this exercise, which has been given a very interesting new twist. Kudos to the Indian Armed Forces and to the Chief of the Defence Staff for thinking of this, of enhancing the value, the optic value of this deterrence exercise aimed at our neighborhood, very hostile neighborhood in terms of China and Pakistan. The message has gone clear to them, don't mess with us. But there is another audience, intended audience for the Pokaran kind of exercises now and in the future. Look, as I said, India is now aiming for full autonomy, autarky in critical weapon systems. Unfortunately, till very recently, 70% of our heavy weapons and equipment were all imported, were all ex-import, whether from Russia, whether from France or from the United States. But 70% of our inventory was ex-imports. This was a disastrous kind of a situation to get into. And let me be equally blunt and straightforward that all our so-called earlier attempts at achieving autonomy in weapon systems, autarky, were a bit of an eyewash because the public sector enterprises were going in for the import of fully knocked down kits, completely knocked down kits, CKDS or semi-knocked down kits, which were then assembled like Meccano sets in India in our public sector. And when we asked our public sector to now upgrade that, they were not in a position to do so. One was the question of the rights that they had not received or whatever, then they did not have the source codes. Let me give you one pertinent example. Just before the 71 war, the MiG-21 aircraft used to fire only missiles. We wanted to mount a cannon and we asked the HAL to do it, and then at that time they had raised their hands, they can't do it. Then it was our own Air Force workshops which mounted the 23 millimeter gun onto the MiG-21, and that proved so effective on the battlefield. It was almost virtually, I would say, a war-winning factor as far as the air war and the interdiction of the ground targets were concerned. So we were under illusion of optical illusion of self-sufficiency created by these semi-knocked down kits, completely knocked down kits, etc., which has proved to be a total, it has delayed actual, autarky, gaining of autarky in terms of designing our own weapons, building our own weapons, constructing our own, matching ammunition for them, etc. So, this has now been achieved in India, and like I said, we have made the ATAGS, which is a world beater gun design. We have made the advanced light helicopter, which is universally people are asking for it. Countries as far as South America are asking for our weapons. We have made the Tejas light fighter aircraft, and till just 2 days back, not a single Tejas aircraft had crashed. It is such a good aircraft it has proved to be. Unfortunately, nazar lag gayi. We have had the first Tejas crash, but I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of that. The Tejas is one of the 4.5 generation aircraft, which is a very impressive aircraft of its class in all over the world. And whenever in air shows the Tejas was fielded, the Pakistanis and the Chinese threw their Thunder jets and Thunderbirds away. The F series of fighter aircraft that they have been putting up for export, because this outperformed them completely. So, a number of countries in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, like the Philippines, like Indonesia, and so on and so forth, they have been wanting to buy Indian weapon systems like the BrahMos cruise missiles, like the Akash anti-aircraft missile systems, like the Tejas, like the ALH, like the advanced light helicopter, and also the our advanced towed artillery gun systems. They are very keen to acquire these. Now, this message from Pokaran goes not just to our enemies. Now, for a change, it also goes to our friendly foreign countries. And those who are interested in the acquisition of Indian weapon systems, this is a good demonstration of our capabilities and of our achievements at Pokaran, and I'm sure this tri-service thing will now be a permanent annual feature, and it will help the military attaches of these countries, the foreign correspondents, the press, etc., to focus on Indian weapon systems and seek to acquire them. Now, when we start exporting, we are exporting a fair amount. Our export value has gone up by more than 10 times what we were doing till very recently, and 60,000 crores worth of exports we are doing. We are targeting upwards of 1 lakh crore rupees worth of export of our weapon systems. Then you see it reduces overall unit costs for our own armed forces. When you mass produce such systems, you export them, you reduce cost in your own country for the same weapon systems which have to be issued to your own Army, Navy or the Air Force. So, this I think is a very good exercise which has been commenced. Very thoughtfully it has been worked out, and not only does it send deterrence messages at the conventional level to China and Pakistan and any other country that may think of messing with us, they are given the clear message, don't. And like I said, it also goes to our friendly foreign countries who can then pick and choose the weapon systems that they want to buy. They can see their performance with their own eyes. They can see them at the test range of Pokaran, live firing demonstrations, which would help them to make up their minds and make the buy decisions that would help India so much by boosting our foreign exchange reserves, by reducing unit costs for our own armed forces for all these weapon systems. Thank you.